Elena Marchetti stood at the edge of the ballroom, holding a glass of champagne she had no intention of drinking. The room glittered with gold light. Chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls. Women in long gowns moved between tables, laughing at jokes they did not really find funny. Men in expensive suits shook hands and smiled the kind of smiles that never reached their eyes. Elena had been invited to this event by accident. A mutual friend, a woman named Carla, had asked her to come along as a +1. Carla worked as an event planner and had organized this charity gala for months. She had no idea what history waited inside that ballroom for Elena. Elena had not planned to come. She had said no twice, but something inside her, some old and stubborn need, had made her change her mind at the last minute. She told herself she wanted a night out. She told herself she wanted to wear the blue dress that had been sitting in her closet for 2 years. She did not tell herself the truth, which was that she had heard a name mentioned in passing, and that name had pulled her here like a hook under her skin. Vittorio Salvano. 5 years ago, that name had meant nothing to most people in this city. He was a businessman, people said. He owned restaurants, a shipping company, a chain of hotels. He gave money to charities. He shook hands with politicians. He smiled for photographs. Elena knew a different story. She knew about her brother Daniel, who had worked for one of Vittorio's companies as a young accountant. Daniel had been bright, hopeful, and a little too curious for his own good. He had noticed some numbers that did not add up. He had asked questions he should not have asked. 6 months later, Daniel disappeared. The police called it a case of a young man who had run away from his debts. They said he probably left the country. They closed the file within a year. Elena never believed a word of it. She had spent 5 years trying to find her brother, writing letters, hiring investigators she could barely afford, and slowly watching her hope shrink into something smaller and harder. Not hope anymore, just a need for the truth. And now, across the ballroom, laughing with his head tipped back, sat the man she believed held the answer. Elena's hand tightened around the champagne glass. The bubbles inside had gone flat many minutes ago. She did not notice. She was watching Vittorio Salvano the way a person watches a storm cloud approaching, half afraid and half unable to look away. A voice beside her broke her focus. "You look like you're somewhere else entirely." She turned. A man stood there, tall, with kind eyes and an easy smile. His name was Cameron, though everyone called him Cam. He worked security for the venue, though tonight he wore a simple black suit instead of a uniform. He had introduced himself to her earlier in the evening, and they had spoken for a few minutes about nothing important. The weather, the music, the strange taste of the appetizers. "I'm fine," Elena said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Cam studied her for a moment. He had the look of someone who noticed things other people missed. "You've been staring at that table for 10 minutes. Elena did not answer. She looked back toward Vittorio's table. He was surrounded by men in dark suits, all of them laughing along with him, all of them nodding whenever he spoke. It was the kind of laughter that came from fear, not joy. "Do you know him?" Cam asked quietly. "I used to," Elena said. "A long time ago. Through someone else." Cam did not press further. He seemed to understand that some things were not meant to be explained in a ballroom full of strangers. He simply stood beside her, a quiet presence, as the band began a new song and couples moved toward the dance floor. Elena thought about walking away. She thought about leaving the ballroom, calling a taxi, and going home to her small apartment, where the walls were covered with old photographs of Daniel. She thought about how many nights she had promised herself she would let this go, that chasing ghosts would only hurt her more. But her feet did not move. Instead, she found herself walking toward Vittorio's table, the glass of flat champagne still in her hand. Cam called her name softly, but she did not stop. Something had taken over, something built from 5 years of unanswered questions and a grief that had never been allowed to rest. The closer she got, the quieter the world seemed to become. She noticed small details with strange clarity. The gold thread in the tablecloth, the way Vittorio's ring caught the light, the slight pause in his laughter as he noticed her approaching. He looked up. For a moment, there was nothing in his eyes but polite confusion, the look of a man greeting a stranger at a party. Then something shifted. Recognition arrived slowly, like a memory surfacing from deep water. His eyes moved over her face, and Elena watched the exact second he understood who she was. "Marchetti," he said quietly, almost to himself. "You remember," Elena said. Her voice did not shake. She had imagined this moment so many times that saying the words finally felt strange, almost unreal. Vittorio's smile returned, but it was different now. Careful, measured. "It's been a long time. How are you, Elena?" "My brother is still gone," she said. "That's how I am." The men at the table went quiet. The band kept playing, but the air around the table had changed, grown heavy and still. Vittorio spread his hands, palms up, as if offering something honest. "I was very sorry to hear about Daniel. He was a good young man, talented." "Where is he?" Elena asked. "I don't know," Vittorio said. "I wish I did." Something in Elena broke apart quietly, the way ice cracks under weight before anyone hears it. She had waited 5 years to stand in front of this man, and here he was, giving her the same empty words the police had given her long ago. Without thinking, she tipped the glass in her hand and let the flat champagne fall across the white tablecloth in front of him. It was not a large gesture, it was not violent, it was simply a small, deliberate act of refusal, a way of saying that she would not sit quietly and accept another polite lie. The band stopped. Someone gasped. For a moment, the entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath, as if 200 people had all noticed at once that something important was happening at that table. Vittorio looked down at the spreading stain on the tablecloth, then back up at Elena. His men shifted in their seats, unsure whether to stand, unsure what was expected of them. Elena felt every eye in the room settle on her, but she did not look away from Vittorio's face. "That's for Daniel," she said. "That's for every year I spent not knowing." Vittorio's expression did not turn angry, as she had almost expected. Instead, something softer crossed his face, something that looked almost like regret, though Elena did not trust it for a second. "Sit down," he said quietly. "Please." "I'm not here to sit with you." "Then stand," he said. "But listen, just for a moment." The ballroom around them had gone strangely silent, though the world outside the small circle of tension seemed to move on without noticing. Waiters continued to carry trays. Couples near the edges of the dance floor kept talking in low voices, but close to that table, everything had narrowed down to 2 people and an old wound that had never healed properly. "Daniel worked for me for 8 months, Vittorio said. "He was smart, too smart maybe, for his own comfort. He came to me one day with questions about the shipping accounts. I told him to leave it alone. I told him some things are better left unexamined." "He didn't listen," Elena said. "It was not a question." "No," Vittorio said. "He didn't." "So what happened to him?" Vittorio looked down at his hands for a long moment. When he looked up again, his eyes had lost some of their careful polish. "I don't know exactly. I know he left the company suddenly. I know there were people connected to those accounts who did not appreciate being questioned. I never gave an order against him, Elena. I want you to believe that, though I understand you have no reason to." "Then who did?" "I don't know," he said again. "I have spent 5 years wondering the same thing you have. Perhaps not with the same grief, but with the same question." Elena studied his face, searching for the lie she was certain must be there. She had built an image of this man for 5 years, a villain clear and simple, someone she could point to and blame for every sleepless night. Standing in front of him now, she found something more complicated. Not innocence. She did not believe for a second that his hands were clean, but not the simple monster she had imagined either. "I want the truth," she said. "Not comfort, not an apology. The truth." Vittorio nodded slowly. "There is a man named Renzo Colavito. He managed those shipping accounts before Daniel started asking questions. He left the country not long after your brother disappeared. If you want somewhere to look, look there." Elena felt something shift inside her chest, a small crack of light in a place that had been dark for a very long time. It was not an answer. It was not her brother returned to her, safe and smiling, but it was a direction, a name, something solid to hold on to after years of empty files and closed cases. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. Vittorio looked at the stained tablecloth in front of him, then back at her. "Because you threw a drink at me in front of 200 people, And you did not run when my men stood up. That takes a kind of courage I don't often see. Daniel had it too. The band began to play again, softly at first, and slowly the ballroom returned to its normal rhythm. Conversations resumed. Waiters moved between tables once more. The strange, frozen moment dissolved back into the ordinary noise of a party, though Elena knew that everyone near that table would remember what had happened for a very long time. Cam appeared at her side again, his expression carefully neutral, though Elena could tell he had watched the entire exchange from a distance, ready to step in if needed. He said nothing, only offered her his arm, a small and steady gesture of support. Elena did not take it right away. She looked at Vittorio one more time. "This isn't over," she said. "I didn't expect it to be," he answered. She turned and walked away from the table, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor, her back straight, despite everything trembling inside her. She did not look back. She did not need to see his face again to know that something had shifted between them, some old and dangerous balance disturbed for the first time in 5 years. Outside, the night air felt sharp and clean against her skin. Cam walked with her to the edge of the parking lot, quiet and patient, giving her the space she needed. "That name," he said eventually, "Renzo Colavito, do you think it's real?" "I don't know," Elena said, "but it's more than I had an hour ago." She looked up at the sky, dark and wide above the city lights, and thought about her brother, wherever he was, whatever had happened to him. For 5 years she had carried a silence so heavy it had become part of her, a weight she no longer noticed until moments like this one, when something finally moved. Tomorrow she would begin again. She would search for the name Vittorio had given her, follow whatever thin thread it offered, and continue the long work of finding truth in a world built on careful lies. Tonight, she allowed herself one small thing. She allowed herself to breathe. The ballroom behind her glowed with light and music, indifferent to the quiet storm that had passed through it. But Elena knew, walking away into the dark, that she was not the same woman who had walked in. She had a name now, and for the first time in 5 years, that felt like enough to keep going.